Let's turn now to Pentagon senior strategist Robert Maginnis, who joins me from Woodbridge in the U.S. state of Virginia. Good to have you on the program with us. You wrote an opinion piece for Fox News in which you say that to stop Putin, we may be forced to return to the bad old Cold War days of mutually assured nuclear destruction. That policy served us well then, and it remains valid today. Can you explain your reasoning behind that?
Well, we have to look at what the Russians have said this past Sunday, raising their nuclear status. We have to look at how they've exercised every September in Belarus the use of tactical nuclear weapons. We need to look at their doctrine, a military doctrine, which says first use under certain circumstances would fit. And then it's interesting, one of the leading members of the Duma has made it very clear to the world that, yes, they would use nuclear weapons under certain circumstances, and they use the name of the country Ukraine in that context. And so that, plus a number of other leaders in Western Europe have confirmed that they do believe that Mr. Putin is predisposed under certain circumstances to do precisely that. So the U.S. has to decide whether or not it's going to return to the status that we had during the Cold War, and that is that we would put our triad, our bombers, our ballistic missiles, and our submarines in a particular status ready to launch. That's a tough decision, but already the hand has been dealt to Mr. Biden, and it was not by someone in the United States, but by Vladimir Putin, who has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world.
What's your assessment of the Russian military operation so far? For example, the 65-kilometer convoy of Russian forces that have amassed outside Kyiv. What do you think the strategy is for the capital if and when forces enter the city?
Well, they're going to obviously try to strangle off the city, starve out the people. They've already used, unfortunately, in Kharkiv, some just horrendous weapons. They've used a thermobaric and a cluster bombs, which should not be used against civilians, and yet they've destroyed buildings and killed a lot of people based on a number of reports. So I suspect Mr. Putin is sending his army in there, hoping that the Ukrainians will surrender. But I have no reason to believe, from Zelensky all the way down, that they are going to surrender to Vladimir Putin and his soldiers. And what I find interesting is that, of course, across Russia, there are already protests in spite of clamping down by the Russian government. And also, they recognize that Ukraine is really part of the family. They speak a version of Russian that they can understand. A lot of family members are in there. And why are they having this squabble? It's because of the man in the Kremlin by the name of Putin, who happens to have aspirations to resurrect the old Russian-Ukrainian Empire far before the Soviet Empire, something that should not set well with the West.
Do you think that President Putin underestimated the resistance that military forces have run into in Ukraine? I mean, we're moving on day 8 of this incursion. Do you think that it's turning into a tougher battle than what Putin was expecting?
Oh, very much so. Keep in mind, he has a 40%, 50% conscript army, and they don't typically, in anywhere in the world, fight all that well. But the professional forces, the generals should have said, look, this is going to be tougher because, this country for 30 years has known freedom. And for them to surrender and go back under the arm of the Russian Federation is something that they don't want to tolerate. And, Zelensky's speech to the European Union the other day was very clear. They're going to fight to the bitter end. And it may be just that, because the Russians do have the manpower and the equipment. And I hope they don't revert to what they did to the Chechens, but to the Chechens, they just decimated entire communities. And that's something that I hope never happens.
All right, we're going to leave it there for now. Pentagon senior strategist Robert Maginnis joining us from Woodbridge, Virginia. Thank you for your time.